So yeah, it's gonna be tough getting back into it, right? Been off for a couple of days, but let's try our best to focus and get back on the horse, right? So again, leasing, it's a long-term rental basically. Anything that gets taxed in this particular subsection, right, called leasing, is always taxed 12%. And maybe so that should be something that you remember, 12%, leasing 12%, leasing 12%, right? The one thing you will never tax is your down payment. So the down payment should never at all in any way, shape, or form be multiplied by 1.12. Okay? This is on page 29. So if you're trying to calculate the total lease cost after taxes, make sure that your down payment is not somehow multiplied by 1.12, right? You got to make sure you don't fall for that, because that's the biggest mistake I see. Morning. So on page 30, we have the formulas, and the one that is most common is this one right here, the total lease cost. Okay, and the total lease cost involves a down payment if there is one. Okay, all the payments combined, that one will most likely always be there, right? I haven't seen a lease that doesn't require to make any payments. And then their mileage charge may or may not be mentioned, right? So this formula can be reduced to just this middle part, or there could be a down payment and there could be a mileage charge depending on the situation. Keep in mind that this middle section here would be the total payments, including taxes, right? So always read carefully, and if it says the payment is already after tax, you would never multiply by 1.12 again. Okay, you have to read carefully, have a highlighter or something so that you don't miss that. Okay. Then there's something called the total cost including the purchase. Like if you were to purchase the car at the end, you basically copy this whole section down here, and then you would add the residual value times 1.12. Right? The residual value is how much a car would be worth at the end of the lease. Sometimes it's called the guaranteed residual value. Okay. And so keep that in mind. So that would only be if you're purchasing the thing at the end. Most of the time, I get you to calculate this, and then I will ask you to calculate this separately, a B part, and then there will be a C part where it's like, well, now what would it be altogether? That is just to break it down a little bit and to make it easier to mark. Okay. All right. Make sure you have some pros and cons of leasing. We talked about that. You should all have this in your notes. 2 of each would be great. 3 of each would be better, but again, you need to figure out how you're going to fit that on your study sheet. So let's go to page 33 and continue our journey. 33, we're going to have to be very wise with the amount of space we take up. Yeah, sorry. Can you read that over and figure? Okay, we'll get over it. Summer will come. Yeah, leasing is on the quiz. Yes. Yep. Okay, so here we go. Michelle is returning a Toyota Corolla. She has leased it for 3 years. So I already put down the months because leasing, we kind of want to stick to months. The original purchase price was $24,000 before taxes. So we'll just highlight that. There's a $310 plus tax monthly payment. There's a down payment of $4,000. The guaranteed residual value is $15,600 before taxes. Let's talk about that. This is just saying that when you're done with a lease, you're going to have to pay this much if you would like to purchase it, right? That's what that is saying. The lease agreement allows for right? 12,000 kilometers per year is your allowance for the kilometers you can drive. And if you go over, you have to pay 15 cents per kilometers. The vehicle is returned with an odometer reading of 41,200. Odometer, right, is just that the number that appears on your dashboard that tells you how many kilometers that car has accumulated over time. Okay? Lots of information. There's no way you're going to use all of that at the same time. So you just have to make sure you highlight, underline, and you know when to use what. So let's do one step at a time. Calculate the total mileage charge, right? Mileage cost, right? Michelle will pay after tax. Okay. Morning. Page 33. Okay. So let's do A here. So mileage, first of all, I want to find out kilometers. And I'm going to go back to my formulas because I want you to have the exact same as I have. Kilometers past limit, right? I'm just going to call kilometers past. You do a little bit of mental math here. 3 times 12, 36,000 is what you're allowed, right? So you obviously are over if you look at the odometer reading. So that's 41,200 minus, I will go 3 years times the 12,000 kilometers you're allowed per year. So be very careful with the space you use because we're going to need more space for the rest. So 41,000 minus 36,000, and you do a little bit of. It's basically Monday for me, so I'm not gonna take the risk here, and I'm gonna do this. 5,200 kilometers over your limit. So that's one of the disadvantages of leasing. That if you go over, there's some big bucks you're gonna have to pay. So 5,200 kilometers over limit. I needed to figure that out before I go ahead and calculate my mileage cost. Right? So here's this is the mileage cost or charge. You take your 5,200 kilometers, you multiply that by, in this case, it's 15 cents per kilometer. And we're going to add taxes to that because it does ask us to figure out what it is after tax. So 5,200 times, yeah. If you always have to show it this way, like to get your 5,200? No, like oh, here, no. I just do that so you know what we're talking, like what I'm talking about. This is what I'm very reasonable that way. You don't have to show me this exactly the same way I'm doing it. As long as you somehow figure out how many kilometers passed. Right? And so this is 5,200 times 50 cents times 1.12 is because after tax. At this point, you all know that already. You should. Right? So there's my final 873.6. That would take you half. That would be half a mark deduction because it's dollars. So you gotta add that zero there. Okay. That is your final answer. That answers A. The mileage cost, mileage charge, same thing. Same thing. So I'm gonna kind of cut that off here. Right. Try to organize my work. B. The total cost of the lease after tax. So I'm looking at my formula here is total lease would be the down payment. I'll put a little bit of a label under this after. Down payment plus, here's where my payments come in. it's 310 plus taxes. So what it's saying is you need to add the taxes, and we know it's leasing, so it's 12% times the number of months or number of payments, right? So I'm going to just put down months like that. Plus the 873.60, which is already, this is already taxed, okay, the 873. So this is your down. This would be the total payments. The total payments you've made over the 36 months. And this is your mileage, right? And so I would be very careful with typing everything in one shot. It's just a recipe for mistakes. So the payment part is 12,499.2. Right? Plus I hope you're seeing that the mileage was already taxed. So I'm not multiplying that by 1.12 again because it already happened up here. So I'm just copying it and adding it to my ongoing total here. So now it's just a matter of adding numbers. And so the total lease is 17,372.80. Sometimes, and you will see that, a question will only ask you to calculate the mileage charge. That's it, nothing else. So then you just focus on the miles, right? Like how many kilometers over you went, calculate the cost, add taxes, same thing. So it'd be reduced to just part A in this particular question. So now we cut this off here. C is asking, read carefully, determine the cost to purchase, right? They want the cost to purchase the vehicle after tax. So when you they only want how much would it be to buy it. I'm looking at my formula and you'll be like, there's no such thing. Like you go to my formula, I'm going to block this for a bit. Oh, total cost including purchase. So I'm just going to do this whole thing. It's like, no. It basically is only asking for this part here, the tail end. So cost of purchase, in this particular case, the car is worth $15,600 when the lease is over. And they want after tax. So I'm just going to go times 1.12. That's it. Let me just move this up a bit. And I will just say that this is the residual value, right? Residual value. And obviously this adds taxes to the whole thing. $17,472. Exactly. So there's actually no need to put 00 at the end, but I always do, just so you're used to having two decimals when it's a dollar amount. And so if there had been a D part, they're like, okay, now what would be the lease and buying it? Like if you wanted to know at the end of the day, how much money would you spend in total, right? You would add the total lease and the cost of purchase, and then you have like 34,000 something, right? So keep that in mind. But in this case, it ends there, okay? All right. I'm going to leave it there for a bit so you can write it down. And I know sometimes you're just writing it down, you're not listening, right? And I get it. But just remember that sometimes a question could only be dealing with the mileage charge. So it would not ask you for total lease or cost to purchase or anything like that. And so then you just basically do whatever it takes to calculate the miles. Sometimes the question will only ask you, okay, like how much would it cost to buy this car at the end of the lease? That's all it's going to ask you. It's like take the residual value. In this case, they gave you it. Like they gave you an exact dollar amount. If they had said it's going to be worth 60% of the original, right, then you just go 60 times the original here, 24,000, and then add taxes to that, right? So you need to be kind of read it carefully. I always say read carefully, because some students ask me, is it always going to be like this? And I say, no, read carefully, right? All right. Let's go back to page 34 here. And Sean is turning in his lease car. Okay. So you're returning it. By the way, we should probably hone in on lease, right? This is a lease situation. Because remember, this is a quiz. You're like, what is this? What's happening here? Oh, it's lease. Okay. I'm going to go to the lease section of my study sheet. The lease says you can drive, right? This is allowed kilometers. Has to pay 10 cents per kilometer if you go over. Actually drove 44,237. So this is an easy one. Like you can clearly tell you went over. He also has to pay $5.35 for paint and $75 to fix the chip on the windshield. Find the total cost of his additional charges. And then I'll just say this. Lease, right? 12% taxes on everything, except for down payment, of course. So what I will do here is I'll do my mileage cost. I'm going to go straight to the cost, and I will just go here on the side. So you see, I will subtract what I drove and what I was allowed. And this is a good mental math question, right? It's 44,237 kilometers times the 10 cents per kilometer. And I will add taxes to this right away. This question should have said after tax. Most of the time it's after tax. So times 10 cents times 1.12. That's 474.54 after tax. 474.54 after tax. What about this here? Paint and fix. Remember parts and labor, right? Parts and labor from the previous units. Same thing. So it's either you remember it's parts and labor, or you just like leasing. Mr. Dirksen said it's 12% on everything. So I'll just go parts and labor would be 535 plus 75, and that both of those combined gets multiplied by 1.12. So remember to put brackets around it or to add it up first before multiplying it. So what are we at? 610 there. That's 610 times 1.12. That's 683.20 after tax. So I'm going to underline this because it's not my final answer. I'm going to circle my final answer. Right, but I figure out the mileage, the parts and labor. So total would be 474.54 plus 683.20. 477.15. Sorry, that is, I'm going to redo that one. Right, 1,157.74 That decimal is kind of floating there. There you go. 1,157.74. This is the total after tax. So I kind of broke it down into mileage, parts and labor, add it up. Don't multiply it by 1.12 again. That'd be a cruel world to live in. Double taxing. So there's that. Let's pause for a bit. Example 4, I'm going to throw it at you here. Imagine you're getting this in front of you right now. Would you be able to answer that? Just try question 4 on your own. There's lots of room there, so use some of the side space here, right? Don't just go underneath, and try to calculate that. I'll walk around and help you out. So if you just want to look up for a minute, I'm gonna maybe also clarify a few things. Sometimes the lease agreement tells you how many years went by, sometimes how many months. So you either, like, if you have months, divide that by 12, right? 48 divided by 12, you get 4 years, right? If I give you the years, you already know what to do, right? Times 12. Then you have the months. So just either divide by 12 or multiply, because sometimes it's good to have both, right? How many years are we talking about? How many months, right? So we know the MSRP, the base price of the car, and then the contract goes as follows, right? So in this case, it's like in bullet form. So it's a 4-year lease, $375 plus tax per month, with a $5,000 down payment. The residual value is 65%. What are we talking about? Well, 65% of what? Of the payment? Nope. It's of the base price. So we're going to have to do something with a 65% and this. So it used to be 100%, but now when you're done the lease, it's only 65%, like, right? Almost half, not quite. But the lease allows, watch this, the wording is tricky. It allows for $20,000 per year. And if you go over, you're going to have to pay this much per kilometer you go over. Okay? So we're then told that the car is returned, right, with this many kilometers on it. So it'll tell you the total kilometers you drove, and then the allowance is what you need to figure out. So for mileage charge, I'm going to do A right here, right? So I'm going to go kilometers over. It's going to be 92,350 minus. Oftentimes it's easy to do, right? So I'm going to go, if you're allowed 20,000 kilometers per year, so 4-year lease, 80,000 kilometers allowed. Somewhere on the margin, somewhere on the side, make sure you make that note. So we're going to go minus 80,000. So that is 12,350 kilometers over. By the way, on average, a person drives about 10,000 to 15,000 a year. Like just going to work and back and forth, like that's average. Some people more, some people less. So that's almost like a full year worth of driving extra, right? So just to give you a reference. So now the mileage charge, mileage cost, I want you to be okay with both, right? I'm going to run out of room, so I'm just going to go mileage cost is equal to 12,350 times 0.11, right? That's the 11 cents per kilometers, and we're going to multiply by 1.12. So let's see here, 12,350 times 0.11 times 1.12. And I get it that, there's a lot of moving pieces here, right? You need to make sure you get everything right. So somehow figure out how many kilometers did you go over? How much did you go over by, right? Over here, maybe where the 4 is, I'm just going to make sure you understand that that's 4 years, right? So 20,000 times 4 years, that's 80,000 that you're allowed as per contract. So we've got our mileage cost done. B, the total cost of what? Of lease after tax. So total lease, this is just the lease. I'm going to take my down payment if there is one. In this case, there is a down payment right here, right? It mentions it $5,000. So you go 5,000 plus. This should be in brackets, this next part. You take your payment. You add taxes to it because it says, right, plus taxes. And then multiply that by the number of months. This is where having it in months is easier, right? Because there's basically 48 payments being made. Plus, I'm going to add that mileage cost to it because you have to pay that. Like if you return it, you can't get away with it. Unless you buy it, they might waive it. I don't know. Right? So I'm just, right? So down payments, mileage. So I'm going to go break this down, clean it up a bit. So here's the 375 times 1.12 times 48. So it's a 4-year lease, right? It's a bit unusual, but it is there. Plus 1521.52. This has been taxed. This has been taxed. The down payment has never been taxed, which is exactly what we want. So I'm just going to add up everything that's around the number I just calculated. So here it is, 26,000. I hope those numbers match. Yeah, they do. Okay. 681.52. That's the total cost of leasing. 26,681. I'm going to cut that off there. C, the residual value after tax. So notice how I break it down. So the residual value after tax, you take the price of the car, the original. Okay. In this case, we need to multiply it by 65%, which is 0.65. And then you can go ahead and add taxes to it right away. You can do this in one shot if you want. Remember, read if it says before, after tax. So this is the cost of purchasing it. This is the residual value after tax. Okay. And then D is what I was referring to earlier. Total including purchase. Right? So this is like your lease and the purchase. So we're just going to go 26,681.52 plus 25,480. And I still have the 25,480 on my screen, so I'm just going to add the other one. So there it is, 52,161.52. And there's that question. Okay. And then I'm going to ask you to go to page 36. And there aren't that many questions here, but it covers leasing in a nutshell. So 36 to 38, I want you to work on. $38 is basically just one question, which is a bit tricky, but if you understand leasing, you should be okay with it. I'll post the answer key in a bit.